while everybody's sitting, I'll just sort of get started. Thank you, Jonathan. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting the announcements. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here, the staff who I love, and everyone. It's great to be back here. I'm going to have this amazing, yes, everybody's in the right spot. Good. Cast of actors, including Jakira, to read from my book Craft, stories I wrote from the Devil. So it's not a play or anything, but they're reading little bits. And this is a short story collection with a meta frame of the writer who writes the stories. And the writer, who's like a Brazilian woman with like curly hair, she she meets the devil in her 20s, a different time. She has a little thing with the devil, and they kind of keep in touch as she writes the stories throughout the book. What they're going to read today is a little bit of the meta frame and little bits from different stories. And I won't be here because of the setup here, so I'll be there. Thank you so much. And then Jesus is here. Oh, everybody has a seat. So I guess I'll be here, but I won't say anything. Oh, do you want to be here?
That's up to you.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm very confused.
Okay. You probably can't tell by looking at her now, but once, in her 20s, the writer slept with the devil. They met at a Halloween party in a pop-up art space in 1999.
She wore a red dress and a pillbox hat, like Nancy Reagan. She stood in red and blue neon lights, holding a drink with one hand.
When she'd seen him across the room,
the writer had not been a writer then, at least not openly so, but the devil had known. He had known the space she had inside her to carry her stories. He had known her hunger.
She typed, and her young self took a sip of her drink and looked straight back into the devil's eyes. Rapture. Rapture.
You probably can't tell by looking at me now, but once, back in my 20s, I slept with the devil. We met at a Halloween party in a closed-down store space in Manhattan, Union Square, in 1981. I was nursing my third snake bite in the corner. Silhouettes danced to memorabilia, backlit by a makeshift red and blue neon installation stuck to a crumbling brick wall. The devil was sitting alone on a beat-up brown corduroy sofa. I was Inauguration Nancy Reagan, a tighter version of the red Adolfo dress, black gloves, a wig between chestnut brown and dirty blonde, topped with a red pillbox hat. He wore an ill-fitting suit, a faded orange wig, and some bad foundation. I walked up to him and asked what he was, yelling over the music. He said he was the future.
I told him his costume sucked.
He smiled, and he said he was often misunderstood, scanning the room as if hoping for a specific somebody else to show up.
I began spinning the first thread of his story. A woman in a white dress. A cheap Halloween bride costume would walk in holding a veil in her hand. I imagined him watching as the woman looked for someone.
As I thought this, the devil nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if privately approving of something, but continued looking at the room with that slight sadness, that want. I recognized some of what I'd been carrying inside mirrored on his face.
Ghost story.
I was writing this story about a man who invented elaborate lies to seduce each of his 3 roommates. To the first woman, he made a confession, walking on Fifth Avenue on their way back to the subway from his special gelato place, his private place he had not shared with anyone until that day when he brought her. He told her he was a trust fund baby, who rejected all the money from his cold-hearted parents because it was important for him to prove to them, and most importantly to himself, that he could make it on his own.
To the second roommate, he said, wiping his eyes, then hers, after the two of them watched All About My Mother on Netflix, that he'd been abandoned by his drug-addicted mother, who in turn had been abandoned by her mother in a tragic, unbreakable cycle. Heartbroken since infancy, he said, irresistibly, he'd never been able to fully let himself trust anyone.
To the third roommate, he whispered one evening over takeout after the cat suddenly jumped on the piano keys that his lineage was cursed and that the ghost of a distant relative's lover haunted his inherited piano. Seeing her eyes widen, he put his chopsticks down and took her hand to his chest, asking her to feel his heartbeat.
My Saturday morning writing group read a draft, but none of them saw the protagonist as a trickster. They believed his stories were true, at least within the text.
Later, I checked in with two more of my friends. They both thought the stories the man told his roommates were true, too. In the end, I changed it to fit the prevalent reading. And I did that by changing nothing. No edits to the words printed on the hibiscus tea-stained manuscript. The change happened only in my mind. I decided that yes, now all the stories the guy told were true, including the ghost one. In fiction, I'd initially thought was a little far-fetched, but still realistic.
It was now a ghost story, I reminded myself. I typed ghost story at the top of the page and wondered where to start, maybe trying to inhabit the ghost, to understand it better. This ghost, who hadn't been there in the first place, who'd snuck in here without my knowing.
In the story, the ghost had been stuck in a piano. I thought of its vaporous spirit, a vaguely human-shaped blue smoke, squeezing under the lid into the wooden case, undulating between the strings, silently running its steam fingers through the hammers, circling the inner walls of the case, so similar to the walls of its coffin, and curling itself, lying on the key bed like a sleeping cat. Until someone came in to play a song, a tribute to the ghost's former self, jolting it awake, beating at it with the hammers, making its smoky body dissipate and sink into the fibers of the wood, the ivory keys, until it merged with them. And the player's fingers touched the ghost as they played the song. And it was so nice to feel touch again. And it was as if the ghost were playing the music too.
Idle hands.
Idle hands.
Dear Amanda, thanks for sharing your draft of Idle Hands with us. It was nice seeing a story with some real people in it. The first of your stories in this workshop with no writers. So far, it is my favorite of your submissions, and I feel it could be just the beginning of work that has a more universal appeal.
Antropofaga.
Antropofaga.
She devoured tiny Americans that slid out of a vending machine.
Tropicalia.
I thought of myself sitting there, my body filled with American proteins, American water, American sugar.
The alcohol taking over my brain and liver.
I remembered reading that it took 10 years for a human skeleton to be completely replaced through cell renewal. I had American bones now.
I thought I was the eater, but America had been eating me the whole time, from within.
And please welcome John Milas, everybody.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming this morning. This is actually really appropriate as someone who doesn't go to church anymore. Readings are my church now, so thank you for communing with me. Thank you to the staff for making me feel like I've been to this 5 times and not just my first time. That sense of belonging, I will never forget it. So my novel, The Militia House, has been out for about a year. It's on paperback row in the New York Times today, which is wild. So if you want to see what the cover looks like, you have to check that out because I don't have a copy on me. I'm reading a short piece that was published by some really unhinged editors in the Journal out of Ohio State. It's called Short Story with Poppy Fields. You cannot open the passenger door from inside the 7-ton because the door handle is broken, which means you're fucked if the 7-ton falls off that narrow bridge near base, like what happened to the tankers who tipped off the bridge last week and sunk to the bottom of a canal and drowned in their upside-down tank. But there's no reason for you to leave. There's nothing outside but night in the desert, night and death. All you see are the taillights of the vehicle ahead of yours in the convoy, 2 red dots like pinholes poked through a black curtain. The bottom edge of the dashboard digs into your knees because you're too tall to fit properly in the passenger seat because 7-tons are not meant for real people. The driver watches the taillights of the lead vehicle in order to maintain proper vehicle dispersion. The driver has never been a real person, not back home or even here in this world. The gunner stands on a platform between you and the driver, his waist and legs concealed safely inside the cab, his head and upper body emerging through the roof of the cab, exposed to the desert wind and anyone watching from their hiding place in the dark. He is not a real person, and of course neither are you. How could you be? You're here because they needed extra bodies for the convoy, someone to ride shotgun and hold the radio, though the driver now has the radio on his lap because he got sick of your shitbag radio etiquette, your clumsy grasp of the phonetic alphabet. He's mad about how unhelpful you are. No fucking brains, huh? Just like the Scarecrow, he says. That's your nickname now, by the way. Scarecrow. Fuck you. I gotta piss, calls the gunner over the sound of the truck's engine. The gunner's probably mad at you too, but he hasn't had as many chances to say it. There you go, Boot, says the driver, laughing. You can help old boy take a piss. How about that? So you take an empty water jug in your left hand and hold it up to the gunner, who tucks his flaccid penis neatly inside. You know it would be more tactical for you to take his penis in your hand and insert it for him so that he could keep each of his hands on the machine gun, but you're both too homophobic to be that tactical. You're pogues after all. The gunner puts his hands back on the M240 Bravo and urinates for many seconds. The seconds become minutes, and the minutes add up. The last moment in your life you watched a human body expel this much fluid was during boot camp. One of your drill instructors yelled so loud his head exploded into pink pulp and dark blood surged across the squad bay deck as if a water main of blood had burst. Then you and the other recruits spent the rest of boot camp mopping the blood, scrubbing the stains off the deck, daydreaming about basketball and cars and drugs and candy and fucking until you graduated boot camp as a private and the Marine Corps sent you on your way to mop blood at your next duty station and the duty station after that, and so on until you ended up here in Afghanistan, transporting food and ammunition to the grunts in a place called Marja, a small farming hamlet, or maybe a city. You don't really know what it is or where it is. You've never been trained to use the Blue Force tracker. You spend all day riding in the convoy, halting for EOD to clear IEDs from the route, halting yet again when an MRAP reversed into a coil of concertina wire and some poor fucking Lance Corporal had to get out and manually remove it with wire cutters while everyone else waited inside their up-armored, air-conditioned vehicles and watched him. After many more hours, the endless desert came to an end and you rolled beside the green and pink poppy fields of Marja, manifested straight from the Wizard of Oz. Then you reached the grunts, waiting for their supplies, which you helped unload for them without any issues, and you turned around and headed back toward base, eventually finding yourself exactly here at this precise moment in time. Now the driver says he can't see the lead vehicle's taillights anymore. And sure enough, he's right. The red pinholes are gone. You cannot find them against the black curtain. The headlights of the vehicle following you are nowhere to be seen in the passenger side mirror. There's nothing except the 3 of you in the truck and whoever might be out there watching from the desert. The gunner's urine overflows through the opening and down the sides of the plastic jug, soaking your sleeve as it runs along your wrist and onto the floor, It collects at your feet in a puddle. Now the gunner's penis is submerged in his own urine. The driver does a radio check, but no one answers. Warm urine seeps into your boots through the side vents, soaking your socks and your feet. The pool of piss rises to your calves, to your battered and bruised knees. You keep a steady grip on the plastic jug as if you were aiming a loaded gun. The 7-ton cab smells like a porta-john. The driver is whispering, fuck this, son of a fucking bitch. But none of you are real people, not if no one knows you're here. No one back home even knows there's a here to be lost in. The gunner's urine is all over his pants. The pool spills over a partition to the driver's side of the cab as the truck shifts back and forth in the soft moon dust of planet Earth. The urine reaches the gunner's ankles about chest high on a shitbag like you. Fuck, says the driver. Fuck! You're not sure, but you think you hear the gunner laugh. You can see 2 collapsed furrows through the bulletproof windshield, the tire tracks of the lead vehicle. Maybe you can catch up to them. You close your eyes and go to a happy place, but all you see are poppy fields, the Emerald City's green skyline looming on the horizon. Rotting corpses lie in the shade of poppy leaves, their faces blanketed by asbestos snowflakes. Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. You imagine an IED going off nearby so close that the explosion makes no sound at all. You snap out of it. The helmet liner squeezes your throbbing temples, a snake constricting its prey. The urine is up to your chin now, but the passenger door is broken and you can't open it from inside the truck. You grab the door handle anyway and you thrash around trying to get it open with your free hand while you continue to hold the piss jug steady. Nothing works. Maybe the driver will stop and get out and open the door for you. One can hope, can't they? It's hot like a sauna and your tongue is dry as moon dust. The urine reaches your nose and you close your eyes again. You're so thirsty, you crave something cold with too much sugar. Thank you. Please welcome Cintia Santana.
You might notice I'm a little shorter than John. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you for being here. It's a beautiful day out there. It was not raining when I walked in, so thank you for being here. Thank you to all the staff at Sewanee. It is my first time here, and I'm still processing just like what a spacious week it's been, and so looking forward to the one ahead. So I'm going to read a few poems from my first collection, The Disordered Alphabet, which came out with Four-Way last September. And I had hoped to get my collection out before I needed reading glasses, but hey. I like when I discover that there's a story inside a word. And so the first poem I'm going to read is called Inherit. Inherit. In her, it in her. Hereditary, she heard it said, or somewhere read. Her hair, her thinning hair. Her hearing poor. Her air, she was. In her was her, in there. The air around her air also. Mother, moth to light, to air. She too. She too. As the title, the Disordered Alphabet, perhaps suggests, this book contains a letter to each letter of the Roman alphabet, or a poem about each letter. And the poem that serves as a preface is called Word, which sounds like a simple enough word with which to begin a book, but the very first word of the poem is Widsith, and it was not until the galleys were way advanced that I thought, wow, that is like the most, that's a word very likely to bounce a reader right after the word word. Widsith is the name of a poet in a poem by the same name, compiled in the late 10th century, it's thought, the Exeter book. So just so you know, that's how it begins. Word. Widsith spoke, unlocked their word hoard. They who sent upon us swell cloud of word pour, abundance. We who were made to grow out of the earth and return to it. So in the 600th year of our life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the windows and the fountains above the great deep broke open at once, and the words rained down upon us for 40 days and 40 nights, which is to say much, but in the words that we used then. What was the matter with us that we did not fear such breaking? What became of all that we did not say with those words before new fallen ones washed them away? The world is in the beginning become wild and waste. The face of words not separate and then separate. Words from words as two, the waters from the waters, and all the while the runic wind changing to ruin. Even as she-dove showed us a well, and therein the we, and a mouth breathed out a pale blue moth, and from the whirl of a whelk, a newborn elk stepped impossibly out, blinking. All the earth was made wet and webbed wide, a well and a wellspring, a worden, the sluices of heaven wording as we stood in that great rushing wind within, yet without name, turning. There are also some letters that are titled, Dear Mr. Vastness, Dear Mr. School. The lessons are getting harder. Although I have studied, I feel no more prepared. The switchgrass, the shadow on shale, the white of birches, so like the white of skulls. Is that what is meant by voice? I know to sing through woods, but I did not anticipate the need for knives. The river is without banks. The red thread around my wrist has snapped. Morning, empty corral, undress me. So I have been working on concision, believe it or not, and this poem is without punctuation, so you might not know when it ends. So when it ends, I will just look up. Self-portrait as the letter I. Improvise. And a couple more. Ode to your salmon soul, to your mother and your father, and their mothers and their fathers, to the pale pink of their love and their cold, unseasoned waters, because they made you, you, you. Ode to your mouth gasping, to its echo of my gasping, to your bludgeoning, which is my bludgeoning, and the tears lost to this water. Ode to the bear's maw, wound wide and lovely dark, to the quiver and muscle, the barb, the tidal marsh, and the cruelty of shallows, to the fight, the current, the heave and the climb, to the higher, higher heights and the estuary's sky, a riot of stars, silent winks that bind. Ode to the slope, the steepness, the leap and the lope, to the feast and the stones, to Chinook and chum, to the sweet eelgrass, to the first gravel nest and the next, to your rings, narrow, wide, to your hump, your growing teeth and your kype, ode, to your cherry skin, your darker silver, blues to your milt, your red, roe spilling, ripe, ode, to you, to you, to you, to the river rumoring home. And the last poem I'm going to read is for the letter B. Dear B, never the bride, never been better, nor best. A burden is nothing like a bird. A bus become a boy, little boy. A boy become a bomb. Let bygones be, let bygones be. Breath is but borrowed, brief, and the body betrays because you be. Burrow, bury the black in the berry, bury the bumble in the bee. Bless the bean, bless the butter and the cup. Thank you.